one of the biggest issues is the fires. It's been a year, and I want to talk a little bit about that process and
Sure.
what the city is doing right now, still for these recovery efforts.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, in Los Angeles City, there is one neighborhood, which is the Palisades. So Los Angeles doesn't cover the Eaton fire nor the Malibu fire. And so within the city of Los Angeles and the Pacific Palisades, the focus is on building, building, building. So we have approved over 800 homes to begin rebuilding. Out of the 800 that have been approved, 400 are actively under construction. And to think about it, that didn't really begin until about April or May, because the first part of the year was cleaning up from the fires, the debris removal, and then trying to do everything we can to advocate to people who are impacted by the fires with insurance and with their banks and other things like that. But I will tell you that right after the fires, and actually even during the fires, we set up 4 impacted worker centers, because I think that in LA, there wasn't a lot of attention paid to the people who work in the homes, on the property, or on the businesses. And that is a percentage of folks who are immigrants.
And
And
Latinos
wanting,
too.
exactly, well, almost all Latinos. So, but we wanted to have services specifically for that population. So we set up 4 impacted worker centers. We didn't care where you were impacted. So if you were impacted by Malibu or by Eaton, those services were available to you. During that time, we also provided cash resources, business resources, because I think that a lot of times when people think of landscapers or people who are doing gardening or inside the homes, some of those people are small business owners, because they might take care of multiple homes with staff. That's a small business. And we wanted to make sure that they received assistance as well. Most of those centers now have closed down because we're in a different phase, or we also provided immigration services as well.
There's a lot of people that are saying that the process is really slow. A lot of them are saying that they actually think the process is a little bit fast.
Yeah.
What do you say to that? Because I
Right.
saw that there was only 15% of homes right now being attended, right? Like that they're in reconstruction. What do you say to that?
Well, actually, if you compare that to other fire areas, there's some areas where they are at the same numbers after 2 years, and we're there after 1 year. The other thing is that individual homeowners have different circumstances. Sometimes they might not be able to build back because of insurance. They didn't get any coverage. A lot of the insurance companies, unfortunately, canceled policies before the fires. There are people who, their banks, they need to pay their mortgages off. And many of the banks did what is called forbearance, which means we know you're out renting because you're not in your home. So we will suspend your mortgage payments for a year. Well, that year is ending. So I've been advocating to banks, please extend the time. And I will tell you that Raul Ananya from the Bank of America, he was already moving in that direction. And so he provided 3 more years of forbearance. And that means that for 2 to 3 years, you don't have to pay your mortgage. We'll take those years and we'll add them into the back end of your mortgage. So rather than a 30-year mortgage, you now have a 33-year mortgage. So a lot of what I'm doing is about advocacy where the city does not have power, but also making sure that our process, if people hit roadblocks because of the city bureaucracy, that we move on that right away. So what I did really when the fires were even going on is that I signed a number of directives, and those directives called for the expediting through the city process to expedite the bureaucracy, get out of the way of people who want to build so that they can
what do you
build
say
back
to those
immediately.
people that are criticizing that you have not done enough, that the city has not done enough? Because there's a lot of people saying that.
Oh, yeah, I know. But, understand too that if you lost your home, you're angry. You are grieving. You're just coming off of the holidays. And so the trauma gets increased because even though your house might be going through its process, I'm still not at home. And I understand that people are angry and criticize it, but there's a lot of things people are angry about that are actually outside of city authority, such as I can't force the insurance industry to cover people.
True.
I can't force banks to extend forbearance, but I can advocate for it.
But what is your message to
So,
politicians that are encouraging this kind of behavior from ICE officials?
well, let me just say that this experiment started here. We were the first ones that had our city occupied by 700 Marines, 4,000 National Guard, none of which was needed. That has been what has happened in our city. And so we knew that we were the experiment and it was going to expand nationwide. And that's exactly what has happened. I am very concerned about this because they also put billions of dollars into Homeland Security. And now they're doing a massive recruitment effort and a massive recruitment effort for the Custom and Border Patrol and for ICE agents. They're offering people a lot of money to sign up. They're taking people off the street, expediting the background checks, expediting the training. And I am worried that pretty soon, hundreds of thousands of agents will be deployed all over the country. And you're going to have things like you had in Los Angeles on New Year's Eve. We had an individual, Keith Porter, who was shot and killed by an off-duty ICE agent. You had what happened yesterday, because when you deploy massive numbers of people like that, we don't know what rules they're following. We don't know what their training is. And I'm worried that we're going to see more of this. But one thing that's very important is that the raids never stopped here. They still go on a daily basis. They're just not as high profile. What about the people that have been detained? What about the fathers and mothers that were missing at Christmas? What about the fact that as the city, we raised over $1 million to buy toys and other items, food and all, for Christmas, for the holidays, to deploy, to give to people, and that we couldn't even have them come and collect the items. You had parents that were afraid to go to the toy store, that didn't want to go to the places to do Christmas shopping. So we provided the toys to community organizations and churches so they could go, kind of incognito and pick up Christmas gifts. That is shameful.
Yeah, and let's keep talking about those critics because a lot of people are saying the city is not doing enough to protect the immigrants here in LA. Well, what can the city do and what have you guys done?
I think that is the point. The city's authority is limited when the federal government comes and takes over. The federal government power is higher than the local government, than the state government. And so that's why I referred to it as an invasion of our city. And so what the city can do is do everything we can to protect the immigrant population. But like I was describing, buying toys, giving them to churches so people could come, making sure that people had food, for the holiday season and distributing it through churches and through other means. So those are the things that we can do. One of the problems, though, is that oftentimes people don't know what we're doing, which is why I appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation with you now. I want people to know what we're doing.
And another topic that people are really talking about, they're saying that maybe this whole ICE situation and then the wildfire situation can cost you your reelection. What do you think about that? You think people are really nitpicking and saying she didn't do this right, she didn't do that right?
That is not my focus. My focus is to protect Angelenos and to get the fire survivors back at home. And I'm not going to allow myself to deteriorate into a political debate over my job, which is keeping Angelenos safe, regardless of who they are, where they came from, or when they arrived here.
Can you tell me why?
Why
want to be reelected?
Because I want to finish my job. I left Congress to come here because I was worried about the people who are living outside, the homeless population. Los Angeles has 9% African American population, and over 30% of the people on the street are African American. Latinos are about 50% of the city, and over 40% of the people on the street are Latino. That's 74% are Black or brown. To me, that is a crisis, a humanitarian crisis, and I don't want to leave until I am able to really make serious headway into this. But also, that's on the negative. On the positive, we have so much to look forward to this year and the future years. We have the World Cup here. We have the U.S. Open for golf for women and the All-Star basketball game. I want to make sure that all of our communities benefit from those. For example, when the World Cup comes, we want to have fan festivals, watch parties in all of our neighborhoods. We want the small businesses to come out and sell to the people that are doing this. All of these events should help uplift our community, because we know that one of the main problems we have is that this city now is not affordable. When I grew up here, Los Angeles was a very affordable city, and that the most extreme manifestation of that lack of affordability are 40,000 people on the street. That's why I'm here. That's why I want to finish my job.
And talking about those events, I will be honest with you. A lot of people are like, why all of a sudden, when these events are coming to our city, is that now Mayor Karen Bass is doing something about the homeless population? What do you say to that?
Well, what I say is that I was elected and started serving in December of 2022. This is a problem that has been around for about 4 decades, so I wasn't here. Now, when I was in Congress and when I was in Sacramento, I worked on these issues, but from a different frame of reference. It was legislation that I worked on. For example, legislation to protect foster children. Again, if you look at the subsets of the people who are on the street, we put foster kids on the street. When they turn 18 or 21, we cut off their benefits. Now, our young people who grew up in our home, in our middle class homes, we couldn't put them on the street when they were 18, and they have everything that they need. Our children, adult children, depend on us economically for quite a while. What do you think happens to an 18-year-old that doesn't have a family? So when I was in Sacramento and when I was in DC, I worked on those issues. I left DC so I could come here and work on this problem. It's not as though I just started working on this problem, but it is true that I've only been mayor for 3 years.